From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Thanks for listening to the Wildcast podcast. I'm Justin Spears here with Michael Lev. Subscribe, rate, and comment to the Wildcast podcast wherever you get your podcasts. And for all Arizona Wildcats coverage, go to Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app. We got lots to talk about today. Plenty to discuss after a pretty wild weekend with Arizona sports. It was a good weekend for Arizona football, right? They get the big win over the Colorado Buffaloes and the Fighting Deion Sanders, the Fighting Primetimes. And then on top of that, Arizona basketball, men's basketball, getting a huge win over Duke at Cameron Indoor on Friday. Arizona women's basketball also sweeping the weekend. Arizona volleyball also had a good weekend too. For all Arizona athletics, it was a pretty good weekend for them.
It sure was. How was your weekend, Justin? You went to Boulder for the first time.
It was crazy.
Tell me about it.
What an experience. The barn that they have attached to Folsom Field, or at least it looks like a barn. On the inside of it, it feels like a barn. I noticed there were like seats kind of up high. Maybe it used to be a basketball gym connected to the stadium.
Yeah, that is weird, isn't it, when you walk in there?
Yeah. And it has this, like the food area, and the band was playing inside of it. It was just a very unique pregame setting, and there were just so many people there. It was a pretty much a sellout for senior day, and there were a bunch of people there. A lot of Travis Hunter jerseys, a lot of Shedeur Sanders jerseys, a lot of Deion Sanders merchandise. I was really kind of taken aback by how much they've really they're all in on Deion Sanders at Colorado. I mean, it was just everywhere you turned. It was Deion this, Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders. They're all about primetime. And then I got to see Ralphie run for the first time ever, which was pretty awesome to see. I wish I was on the field for it, but seeing it from the press box, seeing it live, it's a tradition unlike any other. It was cool.
Yeah, I just love the scene up there. Great for a day game. Was it sunny? It was sunny, right? Sunsplash, grass.
Yeah.
Like you can kind of see the towns / campus from the press box. I love the bricks.
The brick buildings.
It just feels like college football.
Yeah.
You know. And Ralphie, yes, no one else has anything like Ralphie, to be sure. And it was definitely an entertaining game. Close. It kind of went exactly how I thought it would go. Honestly, I just kind of figured they'd have just some stumbles a little bit. But the most important thing is they got out of town with a W.
Yeah.
And how did they do that? Well, good adjustments in the second half. Won the fourth quarter again. I mean, they have dominated the fourth quarter. You wrote about it over the weekend. That's a sign of determination, resilience, depth. Like, they didn't used to have depth.
And a great strength and conditioning coach, too.
Strength and conditioning, like, they're just gearing up for that. So that was really impressive. I thought that the way Jed handled the end of the game was absolutely perfect and exactly what he should have done. They got kind of lucky that they ruled Montana Lamonia's Craig down I didn't think about it at the time, but man, if they had given him the touchdown there, it would have been a whole different story. They would have had to come up with a stop at the end of the game. And they were doing well defensively, but my whole point was, when people were kind of debating the decision, I'm like, I don't want to put the ball in Shedeur Sanders' hands with Travis Hunter out there on the field if I don't have to.
Yeah.
Right? So run it down, kick the field goal, get the hell out of Dodge. And that's what they did.
And you wonder if that was the case, would they go dollar package pretty much the entire time on that final drive, where they just have all defensive backs? Because, I mean, they're trying to get down the field. A lot of playmakers, a lot of speed. Jed Fish noted that during his Monday press conference, that there's a speed everywhere on Colorado. Maybe the dollar package would have been perfect in that situation, but they didn't need it. They got lucky. Montana Lamonia's Craig was able to stay out of the end zone. Well, I thought he got pushed in the end zone, but then he was ruled down at the 1 yard line. And then once I saw Noah Fafita take the ball from the right hash and run it to the middle, to the left, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant play calling by Jed, because Colorado only has one timeout left, and then you could take a couple of kneels, milk the clock, and then set up Tyler Loop for a chip shot 24-yard field goal. And as we all know, he's money when he's inside 50 yards. He was just named Pac-12 Special Teams Player of the Week on Monday, and you know what? He's actually extended his range a little bit. He knocked down a 52-yarder against Colorado. Maybe the mile-high elevation had something to do with that, but I mean, he was awesome. And when you think about it, I mean, those 2 field goals were ultimately the deciding factor in that game. But going back to that final drive, Lev.
Yeah.
I was looking at the plays. Noah Fafita was 4 for 4, and Jonah Coleman had 2 20-plus yard runs. It was like a perfect just blend for Arizona, but Jonah Coleman was the star of the show, and he was pretty much the entire game.
Yeah, we're recording this today after Jed's press conference. We usually do it before. We had to shift some things around today, and I asked him, why is Jonah Coleman so hard to tackle? And he brought up the Maurice Jones-Drew comparison, and Jed actually coached Maurice Jones-Drew with the Jaguars. They're just so low to the ground, strong legs, determined runners. I don't know if Jonah is quite as shifty as Maurice Jones-Drew was. But man, I mean, he is just a force out there. I mean, 11 carries for 179 yards.
Yeah.
Wow. None of them went for touchdowns. They were able to catch him.
Set up DJ Williams, though.
But holy moly, that dude.
He had 54, 49, 24, and 21.
There might be one more big one in there.
Yeah.
Actually. But I don't want to like toot my own horn too much or pat myself on the back too much, but I kind of feel like I deserve some props for this one because from watching practice and being on the sidelines, like I called this a while ago.
He's a star.
Jonah Coleman is a stud.
Yeah.
And yet another guy from the class of 22, the recruiting class that is going to be remembered for decades at the University of Arizona. So many good players from that class.
The leading
Noah Fafita,
leading passer,
Bolitnikoff Award semifinalist or watch list member, Tataroa McMillan, right?
leading receiver.
Wendell Moe or Moe or Moe. We got to find out how to actually say that name because I've heard it all different ways now. That's another one from that class. Jonah Savanaya,
first rounder,
might be a first rounder. Russell Davis, Tai Yungalale. We go on and on. Takario Davis, Ephesians Prysock, Jacob Manu. Like, it's the bulk of the team.
It's the leading tackler, leading interceptor, leading passer, leading rusher, leading receiver.
Leading everything.
Sorry. I mean, the only thing that they're not leading in is special teams. With Tyler Loop and Kyle Osendorp and all those guys. But like outside of that, man, like the class of 22 has really made their mark on this team.
That's your team.
Yeah.
So, all right. So it was asked of Jed Fish today, like how he reacts to, the coaching carousel, the scuttlebutt, his name being mentioned for jobs, etc. Might as well broach that topic here quickly. Jed sort of dismissed it and said, hey, we are solely focused on Utah, beating Utah. It's going to take everything that we have, etc. Kind of what you'd expect him to say. His name is going to come up. As we know, there's financial issues at the University of Arizona, so that's another factor. Might be hard to keep him if he gets a huge offer.
And assistance.
But here's what I'll say. If you're Jed Fish and you're looking at this team right now, it's a juggernaut next year. I mean, all these guys we're talking about right now are going to be juniors. They're going to be even better.
Yeah.
And you're going to a conference in the Big 12 that does not have a powerhouse. Texas and Oklahoma are leaving. That creates a void. Obviously, Utah's going to be good because they're Utah. Colorado, I think they're going to be a threat. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think if Jed comes back and is able to keep the team intact, I think there's a pretty good chance that Arizona could be the preseason favorite to win the Big 12.
Whoa, over Utah.
Maybe. I don't know. There's a bunch of guys on Utah whose futures are uncertain, including Cam Rising. If they have a healthy Cam Rising next year for his 8th year or whatever it is, maybe they're the team that you look at. But man,
yeah.
I mean, Arizona right now, if they keep winning, they're going to finish probably in the top 15 this year with so many guys coming back who are sophomores or redshirt freshmen this year. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I'm Fish and I'm looking at that, like, hey, Arizona's the place to be. Stick around here and kick some butt.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to, also be attractive for maybe some other transfer portal guys. They're going to be able to go into the portal and get to the positions that they need. Offensive lineman is very tough because usually, I think you pointed this out, Lev, last week or a couple weeks ago, that the best offensive linemen in the portal are all going to go to teams that are competing for the college football playoff year in and year out, just because they're so hard to find. So they're going to go into a situation where it's really good for them. But hey, Arizona's a pretty good situation for a lot of guys. But they have some guys in the wing at like left tackle and other positions. But I think that with the young players they have now that are continually getting to better, I think that this team, like you said, next year will be a dominant force in the Big 12. And I'm really just impressed. I mean, when we talk about like the development of this team and where they're going right now, I mean, the one side of the ball that's really just impressed me has been the defense. With Jacob Manu as the linebacker and the other young defensive backs are getting better, and also the young pass rushers, the job that Johnny Nansen and the defensive assistants, I mean, it's truly remarkable. I mean, I was looking, Lev, in the second half stats in that Colorado game. Colorado, they had 250 yards of total offense in the first half.
Was it 102 in the second?
102 in the second half. Rushing yards. I mean, Arizona dominated rushing yards in the second half. And a big part of it was Jonah Coleman stepping up, but I also just got to tip the cap to Johnny Nansen and his defense for really stepping up when it mattered most. And honestly, it's kind of been like that, all season long. In times where the offense may stall a little bit or have their down moments, the defense is able to really pick it up and not allow the game to get too out of hand. We've seen in years past, Lev, in a situation like at Colorado comes out playing fast. They have really good field position. It seems like all things are happening very well for them on the offensive side of the ball. And then it all just unravels for Arizona. And then they're playing catch up or it just gets too out of hand for them. But it always seems like when things may go a little left, they just kind of just weather the storm. And a big part of it is their defense.
It's sort of like pitching in baseball. Like if you have good pitching, you can stay in pretty much every game.
Yeah.
Right? Like Arizona baseball the last couple of years, they couldn't win a game if they only scored 3 runs. Like they'd have to score 6 or 7 runs to win. Arizona football's kind of been the same way. Like they'd have to score 35 plus to win. But if you look at the scores of the Oregon State and UCLA games, they only had 27 points.
Yeah.
And they won one of those games easily. And maybe UCLA had some quarterback injury issues that contributed to that pretty desultory performance Saturday night against ASU, which is on the lookout for a new athletic director now, by the way, as Ray Anderson has decided to step down after about almost 10 years on the job. But yeah, it's been really impressive. I don't want to get to the mailbag prematurely, but there is a question here that kind of dovetails with what you're talking about. It's from Catbacker, Zona at Zona7378. If Johnny Nansen leaves to become DC for USC, how realistic is it for Dwayne Aquina to replace him as DC here? Well, first of all, I mean, I think it's premature to say that Johnny Nansen's going to leave at all, and premature to say he's going to leave for USC. I think he has proved that he can be a really good defensive coordinator, but I think USC is going to go after like a bigger name. Zach Arnett was just fired today from Mississippi State, and he has a great track record as a defensive coordinator. Maybe he's not cut out to be a head coach. I think that's someone they could look at. They're certainly going to look at Jim Leonard, the former Wisconsin defensive coordinator who's now an analyst for Illinois. But if something like that did happen, Dwayne Aquina's in his 70s, I think. There's no question that he is a good football coach. Like, he knows the game, very fiery, energetic, on the field. All that stuff's good. Recruiting-wise, I think that it would take a big hit.
Yeah.
Because Johnny Nansen, on top of proving himself as a good DC, he's a really good recruiter too. A lot of those Polynesian defensive linemen and linebackers who are here, those are through the connections that Johnny Nansen and his right-hand man, Jason Kafusi, have in the Polynesian community.
Yeah.
Martell Irby wouldn't be here if not for Johnny Nansen. He's always been a good recruiter. I think where people questioned him was like, could he, the X's and O's, the strategy, all of that stuff. And he's been really good. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, that's a route that you could go. I think having Dwayne Aquina on the staff has been a huge asset. As defensive coordinator, though, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Lev, shall we get to the mailbag?
Yeah.
All right.
Let's just keep on rolling here.
Okay. So getting into the mailbag, our first one comes from Chris MCAT. Chris asks, where do you think Arizona deserves to be ranked according to CFP committee? That will be unveiled Tuesday night. Right now, they are currently number 19 in the AP Top 25. So they're top 20 for the first time since the 2015 season. I believe that is pre-Lev. This is the highest ranking since Lev's been here at the Arizona Daily Star. So yeah, Arizona's number 19 now in the AP Top 25. In terms of the CFP ranking, though, will James Madison be a part of it? Because I mean, they can't go to a bowl game, so they're not going to be included. Maybe Arizona. I mean, they are 21 right now in the CFP. I would imagine them probably climbing a spot or two. I would say higher than their AP ranking. So maybe he's number 17.
Hey, man,
18?
I'm the guy to come to for rankings talk, right? Mm-hmm. I am an AP voter. I've been getting a lot of flack the last couple days from fans of Liberty and Tulane.
Oh.
Because
You didn't rank the undefeated Liberty?
No, I did not. Look, man, it's hard to get everybody in.
Shame, Lev.
It's hard to get everybody in. I ranked Arizona 21 last week, and I ranked them 19 this week. I have Utah one spot ahead of them at 18. And I would say you could definitely make a case that they could be as high as maybe like 17 or so. But they'll probably land in that 18, 19 range, which is an awesome accomplishment. And heck, if they beat Utah this week, they'll move up even more.
Maybe top 15.
So this is a good segue to one of my questions over here. Okay. You ready for this one?
Sure.
All right. What kind of chaos do we need to pull for that ends with Arizona in a New Year's Six bowl? And that's from Daryl at Red Army Cats. I mean, look.
It's a tall task.
They are still alive for the Pac-12 championship game. A lot of things have to happen. They do not control their own fate in this regard. But they are still alive. So if they somehow got into that game and won it, they're probably going to New Year's Six bowl, which is just a wild thought.
And they'll probably play either Washington or Oregon in that championship
right. It would be
game.
one of those two, right? Yeah, unless, I think there's a scenario where Oregon State could beat both of them and maybe make their way in there, right? I don't want to bog us down here with all the different scenarios, but I mean, look, for them to get into a New Year's Six game, you just want as many teams that are in that top 15 to lose.
Yeah.
And maybe lose more than once. And just keep winning and see what happens. Looking at the Pac-12 standings right now, some astute people pointed out on X/Twitter today, if they still had divisions, Arizona would be in first place in the South. Sole possession.
Damn.
But they're in third right now. Washington is 7-0, Oregon 6-1, Arizona and Oregon State are 5-2. Washington plays Oregon State this week at Corvallis. And I'll give you a little preview of Thursday's pod. I'm going to pick the Beavers to win that game.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what a very Arizona thing to happen, where they finally don't have divisions, and then in the final year of the Pac-12, Arizona's in first place in the South, but you can't go.
This is why I was opposed to breaking up the divisions.
Yeah.
Because it's just more teams to climb over to get into the title game. I like divisions. Like, if you can't appreciate the Big Ten West and how incredibly horrible it is. I mean, there are literally 5 teams in the Big Ten West that are 3-4 in the Big Ten and 5-5 overall.
Yeah.
That is art, my friend. What's the next question?
All right. We got a twofer from a guy named John, a.k.a. at Ice Cream Paint Job. I listened to Ice Cream Paint Job a lot in 2009. It was one of my favorite songs. John asks, also, everybody knows Fish is... Oh, wait. His first one is, tracking winning out against Utah and ASU is much easier said than done. But because fans are allowed to get ahead of themselves, what would have to happen to get Juve to the Pac-12 championship in addition to winning? I guess we already laid all that out.
Yeah, we did. I mean, they would have to, since they have 2 losses, that means that Oregon would have to lose at least once more, and Washington would have to lose at least twice. And then sort of see how all the tiebreakers play out. They do have the head-to-head tiebreaker over Oregon State.
They do.
So that's helpful. They do not have it against Washington, and they did not play Oregon. Mm-hmm. So those are some of the things to keep in mind.
And then he also asked about Fish's future, saying even if other teams come calling for him, like, say, Florida, or a team that he started his coaching career at, coached under Steve Spurrier. I think got his law degree from Florida. Florida is very near and dear to Jed's heart. What if they approach him and say, like, hey, come be our coach? What do you do if you're Jed? You're like, man, this is kind of a dream gig, right? Coaching in the SEC. You're making probably more money at Florida. You certainly are.
Yeah.
And it's a special place to you. It's a place that you always wanted to coach at. Like, Jed Fish had always wanted to be a head coach. But if you were to ask him, hey, out of all the colleges in America, which one do you want to be the head coach at? I guarantee you when he was an NFL coach, he would say Florida.
UCLA is another one that could come open.
Michigan.
That would be interesting. Michigan is a place that he coached.
Jim Harbaugh says, screw this, I'm going to the NFL.
Michigan State currently is open. That's a pretty attractive job. But you're right. Like, if Florida decides to make a move, which they could, and Jed was on their list, that would be hard to turn down. They're also 3-4 in conference and 5-5 overall, which is just not the standard for Florida. Yeah. So I don't know. I'd be a little nervous right now if I was a U of A fan. I hate to spoil the party, but always this just kind of comes with the territory when you do really well.
The greedy person in me says, go take the Texas A&M job and then just retire in 4 years. Hang it up, because you're going to get paid.
Do you want? I don't know. Some people are wired for those kind of jobs, and some people aren't. Like, if I'm, again, I don't want to speak for Jed Fish, but like, you've got a pretty good situation here. Like, the expectations are not insanely high.
Yeah.
Like, if you can go 8-4 on the regular, like 10 years in a row or something, somewhere around there, like, you might get a statue outside of Arizona Stadium. You go 8-4 at Texas A&M, you get fired.
A fish statue next to the salmon statue.
Wait, what?
I love it. Fish and salmon side by side right outside Arizona Stadium.
Nice. Good job.
So this one comes from Joseph52. Joseph asks, Coach Prime noted in his press conference that they were the better team. Do we believe that? I'm wondering if he's asking if Colorado was a better team or if Arizona was a better team. I think Dion probably said that Arizona was the better team.
Okay. It would be a strange. It would be a strange thing for him to say otherwise, based on many, many factors. Like head-to-head, overall record, etc. Maybe he was just standing up for his team.
Arizona right now is the better team.
Yes.
Now Colorado has some very talented skill players. Shedeur Sanders. He showed that he's an NFL quarterback.
God, he throws such a nice deep ball.
It's like dropping right in the bucket. I think it was a second touchdown pass in the corner.
Yeah, Pac-12 cameras were really kind of focusing on the ball when he'd throw those, and it was just like this beautiful parabola, sailing that. The throw he made for the corner route, the touchdown against Irby, was just perfect.
Yeah,
just perfect. Now he does hold the ball a little bit too long at times. I wrote in my 5 takeaways that he kind of reminds me of Caleb Williams in that regard. Like, he's not quite as explosive as Caleb and doesn't make quite as many like crazy sidearm throws, but holds the ball, really strong arm, throws a beautiful deep ball. I gotta say, Justin, speaking to their talent, like every time those guys would get the ball on the run, those receivers, it was kind of scary. Like, you're like, man, you could take it a long way. Mm-hmm. We've talked about tackling lately, and I think you tweeted this during the game. How much better their tackling has been?
DBs.
DBs especially.
It's just open field tackling. It's just you don't see a lot of whiffs.
PFF had them with 5 missed tackles against Colorado. That would be the 3rd straight game with less than 10 missed tackles. Unbelievable.
Now,
Unbelievable turnaround.
Now let's compare that to the Kevin Sumlin era / Rich Rodriguez era, because that seemed to be a common occurrence with both regimes. And now under Jed Fish and his defensive staff, like, they are not whiffing on guys. They're shedding blockers. They're getting off on guys and tackling and sticking with them. And if they do have one missed tackle, there's 3 guys that are not too far behind to make the play. A lot of game tackling for Arizona this year.
Hey, man, you can have all the flashy skill talent that you want, which Colorado has, but this sport always comes back to 2 things:
the big
blocking, and tackling.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Michigan is so good. They just block and tackle you to death.
And by the way, hold on, I have a mailbag question for you, Lev.
Yeah.
Why is the NCAA such a joke? Because the way they've handled this Jim Harbaugh situation.
Have they handled it at all? Like, what have they done?
Suspending him for the rest of the regular season.
They didn't do that. That was the Big Ten.
Oh, the Big Ten, yeah, I guess. Okay, why is the Big Ten such a joke then? Because he could still coach them during the week. He could still recruit. He's still the CEO. And then to have whoever's their interim head coach,
Sharon Moore,
crying on TV.
Oh, God.
With all due respect to him, I'm like, let's pump the brakes a little bit, because it's not like Jim Harbaugh passed away. It's not like he's like fired and no longer with the team. He's still a part of everything that you guys do. You're just calling the plays. That's all it is.
I mean, I just sort of feel like the Big Ten felt like they had to do something. But what they ended up doing was just so, like, halfway in, halfway out. Like, if you're going to suspend the guy, suspend the guy. Don't let him coach during the week. So it doesn't make any sense. So, speaking of Florida, here's a question from Marcelo Martinez at Marcelo M0908. When do you think Arizona will start recruiting in Florida and other Big 12 territories, or will we just focus on Arizona and California? What do you think?
Well, California is going to be like headquarters for Arizona. As long as Jed Fish is the coach of Arizona, that will always be the backbone of their program. I know that in-state recruiting is a big deal and people want to play up that card. And it seemed like it was kind of trending that direction over the summer when they got Elijah Rushing and Keona Wilhite and all these other guys. Obviously, those 2 that I just named backed out. They still have, a handful of in-state recruits, but when you look up and down each recruiting class at the high school level, it's all guys from Southern California and especially Los Angeles, because that is a hotbed of talent. Now, with that being said, if you can keep that as the backbone of your program, but also making an emphasis on the state of Texas in cities like Dallas, like Houston, that are easily accessible and you can fly to Tucson straight from those cities. And Texas is a very big state. You can find a lot of kids in that state. And the one thing about this staff is that they can evaluate talent. Even the 3-star under the radar guys, they figure out a way to get them in, develop them, and turn them into studs, like a Jacob Manu. I know he's not from Texas, but I'm using him as an example as a guy who was under-recruited and has come in and has really made an impact. They can do the same thing with Texas guys.
Yes, you said it very well. I think they'll dabble in Florida. I don't think you're going to see a lot of guys, but I could see 1 or 2 per class, and they've kind of already done that. Yeah, Isaiah Taylor too.
Yeah,
is from Florida. Remember, I mean, they're going to Orlando. It's not like they're going to Miami. Then those 2 cities are not like right next to each other. So I don't know if you could just lump like Florida into like one bucket. As far as Texas goes, great point. Dallas and Houston, right? These huge population bases. Tons and tons of great players. They've already gotten a lot of good players from those areas. Dalton Johnson, just one example. Michael Wiley is another. And you can get there from here.
Tyler
Loop's another one. Like, I was just thinking with the budget crisis, like, it's going to be hard to sell a trip to Hawaii. Might be a lot easier to sell a trip to Dallas or Houston if you're, as far as putting the recruiting budget goes. But they have also done really well in Hawaii. That's another place where they've gotten a lot of talent. I think it's still going to be very California-centric.
So with this financial situation, Jed's been really good at fundraising and raising money towards the program, Do you think maybe he gets into that a little bit? Because with his NFL connections and the people that he knows, I mean, he got millions of dollars to pump into the north end zone or the football facility inside the stadium. So could him fundraising money, could that help out Arizona football with recruiting and all that? I don't know.
I don't know. He sort of has enough on his plate as it is.
But
I'm sure he would.
But it's just unfortunate because, I mean, Arizona athletics is in a pretty good place right now. The football program's really trending in the direction that y'all wanted it to be. The men's basketball program, I mean, they're number 3 in the country right now after beating Duke. Like, things are good right now for U of A, but then you have this dark cloud hanging over the university, and it's a bad look.
I would say, too, that I think for sure women's basketball and softball are going to be in a better place in the Big 12 than the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 is like the best women's basketball conference. Some people might argue for the SEC, but I think it's the Pac-12. And softball-wise, same thing. So they will instantly kind of rise up to the top of the charts. I think baseball, it's kind of a lateral move going from the Pac-12 to the Big 12, very competitive. But in that same vein, Justin, another one from Cat Backer, Zona 7378. Can we expect ticket prices to rise with the U of A in a financial crisis? I'd say probably so.
Oh man,
it always comes back to the customer, right? I could see them raising parking. I could see them raising ticket prices. I could see them raising whatever the student athletic fee is. They're going to try anything and everything so that they don't have to cut any sports. That's the worst case scenario, right? Is depriving your student athletes of an opportunity to play their sport and get an education, because that's really what it's all about.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, like how many of these kids in any of these sports go on to be pros?
Yeah,
it's a very small percentage. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of college athletics really is to give these kids a chance to get an education who otherwise might not be able to at a great school like Arizona.
All right, last two, Lev.
Yeah.
This one comes from U of A Kathmandu. Boise State and San Diego State jobs are open. How many assistant coaches do you think will leave for higher profile jobs, be it head coach or coordinator at a different school? Do the coordinators in Jet stay one more year to see this 22 class through? Nansen at SDSU with a poly pipeline is interesting.
Here's what I would say. Okay. Bruce Feldman of The Athletic has already put out a list of potential candidates for San Diego State. He has Jimmy Doherty and Brennan Carroll on that list. Jimmy Doherty, I think, coached in San Diego under Jim Harbaugh, I want to say, back in the day. Not San Diego State, but USD. His dad is a coach, so he's kind of grown up in the coaching profession. Same thing with Brennan Carroll. His dad was a coach. I don't know if those guys want to be head coaches. Most guys do. Some guys don't. It is a lot of pressure. I don't know how much pressure there is at San Diego State relative to some other spots, but Bruce Feldman's usually pretty plugged in. He's definitely plugged into the coaching world. So if he puts those guys on a list, there's some validity to it. And Jed would never stand in the way of anyone pursuing a head coaching job.
Because he knows.
So it obviously won't. It wouldn't be both of them, but it could be one of them. I don't see Boise. I don't know. I could see Boise going back to Brian Harsin.
Harsin?
Yeah. I mean, he was there before. He did really well. He's available. Maybe you go back to that well. But San Diego State is definitely one to keep an eye on as far as Arizona assistants go.
I spoke with someone who's very close to the Carroll family, and he said that, because I asked him, like, Brennan as a head coach, is that the thing? He seems to be like a guy who just loves being a position coach, a guy who just loves one group and focusing on them. And he was like, no, he's built for it. I think he would love to be a head coach. So that's a name to keep an eye on, which I didn't think would be possible. I thought that as long as Jed Fish is the coach here, Brennan Carroll will always be the offensive line coach. All right, last one, Lev. MPAS Arizona. What are the keys to the Cats beating a tough Utah team? Pretty much do exactly what you're doing right now, which is exactly what Utah does well.
Out Utah.
Out Utah. Stop the run. Get off the field on third down or after third downs. Run the hell out of the football. Play downhill. Play smash mouth football. All the other football isms that I can throw out there, do that. Out Utah. I'm excited for this game. This is going to be a very physical game.
Can you out Utah? Can you out physical Utah? What a great test. I mean,
this is Oregon State, but better.
I was going to say, they kind of did it with Oregon State.
Yeah.
Right? They got into a trench battle and they ended up on top. I think it's going to be a very similar game to that one. I could definitely see it coming down to the wire. The one thing I'll say about Utah, they're very resilient. They always seem to bounce back. They were right in that game against Washington. There was a really weird play in that game. I don't know if you saw the pick six for Washington, and the guy drops the ball. Like, he wasn't even close to the end zone. And he like, dude, what are you doing?
Deshaun Jackson did?
Hand the ball to the official.
Yeah.
We've talked. This has happened way too many times. Maybe
with the Eagles.
I don't think it was. I think it was someone else from Cal. But
okay.
Anyway, it could be Deshaun. But he was like 2 yards away from the end zone. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. The guy's brain must have just
shut off,
cramped in a major way. But anyway, they were right there with Washington. At Washington, it was a very tough opponent and a tough place to play. They've kind of stabilized things a little bit with Bryson Barnes at quarterback, but they're not at full strength. They've had a lot of injuries this year. Cam Rising and Brant Keithy didn't end up playing at all. Probably their two best offensive players. So you're catching Utah, I think, at kind of a good time. All the momentum in the world, but it's gonna be a brawl.
Yeah,
it is going to be a brawl. Like, those guys are gonna be sore at the end of that game on Saturday.
Mm-hmm. All right, that is it for our mail. Do you have any other questions?
No.
All right,
that's
cool.
it.
And then also Territorial Cup kickoff time, TBD. We'll figure it out on Saturday night or Sunday, but no later than Sunday.
I think, if I were to guess, I think it's going to be a day game on Pac-12 networks, but we'll see.
Whoopee. 8th game on Pac-12 networks this year for the Arizona Wildcats.
8th and final.
And honestly, it's very chef's kiss that the last ever Pac-12 networks game, as we know, will be Stanford versus Notre Dame. Notre Dame on Pac-12 networks to wrap it up. What a game. And how many Notre Dame fans are going to
Larry Scott, man. The gift that keeps on giving.
It's great. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast. Please be sure to go to Tucson.com and the Wildcaster app for all coverage of Arizona Wildcats football and also Arizona basketball. Like I said, the men's basketball program climbing up to number 3 in the AP Top 25 after a huge win over Duke. Going into Cameron Indoor, man, talk about a win for Tommy Lloyd and his club. And then PJ Brown has you covered on Arizona women's basketball. Check out her work as well. So Wildcaster app, Tucson.com, hit us up on those platforms, and we'll see you later on in the week.